Karlov Manor spoilers and previews are all but over, and today I'm going to be giving you my top 5 picks for the best control cards from the set. And with that being said, it was slim pickings this time around. Obviously, we have one absolute stone cold stunner at number 1, but the other slots, kind of slim pickings. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I'm Les Alex. I make Magic the Gathering content, and I, of course, skew things towards control. So if that's your sort of thing, make sure to subscribe. And if you enjoy the content, like and comment down below. What are your favorite cards from Karlov Manor? So before we get into the top 5 list, what would a top list be on YouTube if not for the honorable mentions? And first off, I want to talk about this. Ezram Agency Chief. This is 5 mana, 1 colorless, 2 white, and 2 blue for a legendary creature, Archon Detective. It's a rare and it's a 5/5. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to investigate twice. So you get to make 2 clues, and then you can tap 1 colorless, sacrifice an artifact. It gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Hexproof until end of turn. So if your opponent goes to kill it, you can give it Hexproof, or if you are trying to race an opponent, you can give it Lifelink. This is very similar to Dream Trawler. Now, I'm not saying this card is as good as Dream Trawler, not in the least. But I do think this has traditional standard Azorius control finisher stapled all over it. I think this card is a fine card, and if we ever do get an Azorius control deck that is top tier again, I think that this is possibly the finisher. Obviously, I'm not a fortune teller, so I can't see other cards in the future that haven't been previewed or in future sets, but this is a solid pick for a control finisher. All right, starting the top 5 list, we have Intrude on the Mind. This is basically Fact or Fiction at home, but let's take a look at it. For 5 mana, we've got 3 colorless and 2 blue. An instant mythic rare. You get to reveal the top 5 cards of your library and separate them into 2 piles. An opponent chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand, and the other into the graveyard. Then you get to create a 0/0 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Put +1/+1 counters on it for each of the cards put into your graveyard this way. So, Fact or Fiction at home, kind of legit. It's Jace Architects minus, kind of. And that card was super good. Now, do I think that this is going to span back to Legacy or anything? No. This is another card, in my opinion, that's going to be decent in control decks if there is a control deck in Standard. I don't even think this card is good enough for Pioneer. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it's kind of slim pickings this time around from Murders of Karlov Manor. But Intrude the Mind is a very nice way to create a chump blocker if you need it, and of course get some card advantage. And if you need to knock down a planeswalker, take down a planeswalker, Intrude the Mind is where you're at, because you get that Thopter. It could be a 3/3 flyer flying over, hopefully killing a pesky planeswalker on its way. But Intrude the Mind, again, not the greatest draw spell ever, but it could be a pretty good inclusion if you are a control deck in Standard. Next up, we have No Witnesses. Again, this is another Standard-specific card. We have Treasure Trove of Great Wraths right now in Standard. Of course, Wizards of the Coast did not know that we were going to have all of these sets. We have one of the fattest, most stacked Standard sets we've ever seen. And there are a ton of excellent, great Wraths in Standard right now, including Depopulate, which is a very similar card to this. However, this gives your opponent typically the clue, whereas Depopulate, if they control a multicolored creature, they draw a card immediately. So depending on the meta, one is better than the other. Now, again, this is another one that I don't think is going to see play immediately just because we have so many excellent wraths in standard. But I think whenever a rotation happens, this will be a pretty solid inclusion. If there is a control deck in standard, this is going to be a decent inclusion for it. All right, next up, I have one of the Surveill Lands, but you can include all of the Surveill Lands. If you remember way back when the Scry Lands first got revealed to the world during preview season, in Theros, that was a long time ago. Wow, I'm old and I've been playing this game for far too long, but they weren't very highly sought after. Nobody thought they were going to be a good because they entered tapped. And as it turned out, they were just excellent in standard. So yes, again, this is another standard inclusion. I could see potentially, maybe, possibly these making it in Pioneer or Explorer, but probably not. There's just so many good utility lands in those formats that this probably doesn't make the cut, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. But this one is Meticulous Archive. It actually has plains and islands, so that's something in older formats and Commander and things like that you can fetch for these, so that's an added bonus for sure. But it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, when they all enter the battlefield, you get to surveil. So you get to look at the top card. Is that good? No? Okay, I'll put that in the graveyard. Or is that good? Do I want it in my graveyard? I'll put it in my graveyard to do something with it later on in the game. So I do think that these are perfect, absolutely perfect for standard. These will be in a control deck for sure. Now, you can mix match any one of them. As long as they're in your colors, you can play whichever ones you want. Maybe one of each probably. But yes, I am extremely excited about the Surveill Lands because they've been proven with the Scry Lands. We've proven that this is good. We want these kind of effects in our control decks. Being able to smooth out draws is always important in a control deck. And of course, if you mulligan and you have one of these in hand, it's going to be a much smoother ride typically for you. But yes, the Scry Lands are at number 3 on today's list. All right, next up, we are heading to Pioneer. And this is Deadly Coverup. Now, Dimir Control, Grixis Control, these have been on the fringe in Pioneer. Obviously, Azorius Control is king of the hill in basically every format, but specifically in Pioneer and Explorer, just because you have all of the amazing Azorius cards. You've got Teferi, you've got Supreme Verdict, the list goes on. But Deadly Coverup is an excellent tool, in my opinion, for Pioneer decks that are not playing white. Let's take a look at it. It's 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a sorcery rare. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may collect evidence 6. So if you don't know what collect evidence is, let me explain it real quick. You can basically delve away cards in your graveyard, but instead of specific cards, you're not collecting evidence of 6 specific cards. You have to exile 6 mana value worth of cards here. So once you do that, it says destroy all creatures, period. So that happens regardless of whether you collect any evidence or not. However, it also goes on to say, if evidence was collected, exile a card from an opponent's graveyard. Then search that player's library, hand, and graveyard for any number of cards with the same name. Exile them, that player shuffles, then draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. So, on rate, 4 mana is a Wrath of God, right? That's what we're getting. And on rate, Extirpate is 1 mana. Stapling those together and putting them in black, I love it. I think this card might be what Dimir Control needs to be a little bit more viable. Because in a world where we're playing against Shieldreds and other big scary creatures, you can Wrath the board, then pick the Shieldred, take all their other Shieldreds out, or you can just hit Planeswalkers or any other cards that might be problematic in the matchup. You could do this against a combo deck and hit their combo piece, Obviously, though, they probably don't have many creatures if they're a combo deck, but still, extirpate, pretty strong against those combo decks. That's not really where we want this, though. We're going to cast this, wrath the board, and of course, pick their strongest thing in the graveyard. I think this is really a huge upgrade for Dimir control. And now, obviously, like I said, Dimir control, Grixis control, any non-white, blue control deck, you're going to want this card. Although, yes, those decks aren't the best control variants. But yeah, that's my number 2 pick for the best control cards from this set. All right, at number 1, you probably already knew what I was going to say. We have No More Lies. Holy moly. Did they really give us a mana leak with upside? Yes, they did. It's not a strictly better mana leak, technically, because it has to have white. But man, oh man, if you are playing Azorius Control, this just feels strictly better. And I love hearing those words when it pertains to great, powerful Azorius Control cards. This is No More Lives. Let's read it real quick. It is a color. It is a white and a blue for an instant that is uncommon. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. That's mana leak. But wait, there's more. If that spell is countered in this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. Now, for me, this is going to be a stone cold stunner of a 4-of in Pioneer and Explorer. And honestly, the exiling part actually does matter a little bit in Pioneer just because of Phoenixes. You can hit things from Lotus and really screw them up. But oh my gosh, No More Lies. This card is just, mwah, it's so good. I can't believe it. I thought we would never get a mana leak in Standard ever again. I didn't think it was going to happen. Card's very strong. This card is even better. No More Lies. This card is exactly what the doctor ordered. If you are a control fan, specifically an Azorius control fan, which I am, I'm so stoked for this card. I am super stoked for the set. Let me know, though, what are some control cards you are excited about? If you hate watched this video because you just cannot stand control players, let me know what card you are least wanting to play against. What card are you just angry that they printed? Let me know in the comments. I would love to chop it up with you. And of course, like the video. You made it this far, you might as well subscribe, hit the notification bell icon. I know that like 70% of my viewers, 70% of my returning viewers don't actually subscribe. What's the deal? If you made it this far and this isn't your first time watching, just subscribe. Just subscribe. Anyways, I appreciate you all. If you want to help support the content elsewhere in a more direct way, you can head on over to patreon.com/lessalex. That will be in the description. I appreciate you all, and I'm super stoked. I am super stoked. Be on the lookout for more gameplay videos, especially when this set comes out. I'm super hyped for it. Anyways, everybody, I'm rambling. I appreciate you. Again, I'm Les Alex, and I will catch you all on the flippy flop. Adios.